Hey everyone, this is a video guide to using Nether Travel in speedruns in Minecraft Java Edition. In version 1.16.1, it's become a lot more common for runners to get at least 10 obsidian in the Nether, which you can use to make a portal to the overworld. These first two clips I'm showing are from the current world record for RSG and SSG at the time of recording, which both use Nether Travel in their runs. This guide is just going to be going over how and where to build your portal to give you the biggest possible time save. Before the video, I should mention there is a Google Doc with all of the information you're about to see made by me and Sharpie Man. Huge shout outs to him for all the help with the math and everything on this. I will post the link to this in the description down below. If you would like for everyone not to be able to see your personal Gmail address when you open this, you can open it on incognito mode. You can leaf through all of the intro stuff. There are a lot of helpful tables with good results and good things to memorize. You can look at all of the formulas we use to calculate this stuff, and Sharpie Man has added a lot of stuff on advanced calculation and visualization. With that, I hope you enjoy the video. So first things first, we should talk about strongholds. In every random Minecraft seed, there will be many strongholds that generate, and we'll talk about how and where they generate in a bit. But in general, if you find yourself at the origin, the closest stronghold will be at least 1,000 blocks away. The Eye of Ender obviously is going to point towards it. Something that you may or may not know is that when you use an Eye of Ender, it points towards the center of the chunk where the stronghold generated. So in this case, it'll point towards the 8-8 position of this stronghold in this chunk. So right here, you'll see the chunk position. So in the 8-8, that's where the Ender Eye points downwards. The actual stronghold generates on the 4-4 position of this chunk. So the entry staircase will always be in the center of the 4-4 position. So at this point, talking about strongholds gets a little more math heavy, so we bust out the trusty Excel spreadsheet, of course. This first image is just taken directly from the Minecraft Wikipedia article on strongholds, showing how they generate in concentric circles around the overworld origin. This first ring contains 3 strongholds that spawn between 1408 and 2688 blocks from the origin, and they do spawn at equal angles, so 120 degrees from each other. The second ring contains 6 strongholds from 4480 to 5760 blocks from the origin, and so on until all 8 concentric rings have filled all of their strongholds. These numbers aren't a hard set rule, as there are valid and invalid biomes for strongholds to spawn in. An invalid biome includes a swamp, a river, or an ocean. If the stronghold attempts to spawn in one of those invalid biomes, it will search in a small range around it to spawn in a valid biome instead. If it does not, it just spawns in the invalid biome anyways. So that's why you see a good amount of strongholds in deep oceans. So it is possible to find a stronghold closer than this number or a little bit further than this number because of the invalid biome spawn mechanics. On this next sheet, I've made an example set of 3 strongholds that could spawn in one world. I've just chosen a random distance and a random angle that the first stronghold could spawn, and then force the other 2 to spawn at equal angles away from it. So if I refresh the page, we'll get a new set of 3 strongholds that spawn, refresh it again, and we continue to get more. So based on where you are in the overworld, you could have a stronghold that's very close or very far away. If we do this a bunch of times, we get what 1,000 different worlds would look like in terms of all of their stronghold locations, and we could keep randomizing this, and essentially we recreate what we saw in this first ring over here. So using all of those random stronghold locations, we can basically answer the question, where is the best spot I can be to be the closest average distance to the nearest stronghold? And that's essentially what this plot is. On the x-axis is how far you are away from the overworld origin, and on the y-axis is your average distance to the nearest stronghold. This blue curve is the exact average, so at the origin, you're going to be around 1750 blocks away from the closest stronghold. We could see the minimum of this curve. If we're around 1700 blocks from the origin, that's going to be the best for the first ring, we're going to be just over 1,000 blocks away from the closest stronghold. This orange curve is what I call a high roll curve. When I use the word high roll in this video, I just mean if you take the best 1 out of 4 attempts, what will you get? So this is really a curve if you're lucky. The top 25% of your guesses. And so we see in this case, if you're at the origin, you're about 1,500 blocks away from a stronghold. If you're at 1,700, you're around 400 blocks from the closest stronghold, which is pretty close. So in either case, if you're lucky or unlucky, the minimum of this curve is going to be around 1,700 blocks. And thanks to Sharpie Man for coming up with all this math and double checking everything. But we believe the closest distance to a stronghold from the overworld origin is 1,728 blocks on average, which in the Nether, that means if we're trying to make the most optimal portal placement to get us close to a stronghold, that's 216 blocks away from the Nether origin. If you do this math, anywhere between 200 and 220 blocks, if you place a portal in the Nether, ends up being roughly the same. So you don't really need to stress getting this exact value. If you're trying to do an exit portal really quickly, just place it anywhere in this range and you should get roughly the same result. Okay, so now that we know where we need to get to in the overworld, we can talk about a couple different ways to get there in the Nether. At some point in your speedrun, you're going to get the pearls and blaze rods you want to leave with, and you're going to have at least 10 obsidian. At this point, there's 3 different methods you can take to get to the stronghold. In this case, this is my original portal that I came in. The first option you have is no nether travel at all. You just ignore the 10 obsidian in your inventory, step out into the overworld, and start running the direction the eye points to get to the stronghold. In this case, it's about 1,500 blocks away. I'm at a pretty average lava pool here from the origin, and so it's going to take you several minutes to get to the stronghold from there. But in some cases, your lava pool is going to be quite far from spawn, and so no nether travel can actually be the right play in some situations. The second option we have is called blind nether travel. Blind nether travel just means I need to get about 200 to 220 blocks away from the origin, pick whatever direction looks best in the nether, I place a portal down and hope for the best. In this case, you kind of have to use your head and use some Pythagorean theorem, just kind of figure out roughly where 200, 220 blocks from the origin would be, place your portal down, and just hope that you get lucky. So do that here and go through. In this case, we're going to be on average roughly 1,000 blocks from the strongholds. In this case, we're about 900, so fairly average. So blind travel is pretty good when you have when you're already fairly far away from your portal. If I was this far away, obviously I could just place a portal while I'm trading or doing something and just step through. The very last option is called educated travel. And educated travel is when you're close enough to your original portal, you actually want to go back through it, make your Eyes of Ender, and then find the correct angle to go from here. So if I use the eye and put my cursor over its location, I get an angle that's negative 29.8. And so I want to remember that angle. Of course, I have to go fetch the eye and go back through here. But when I go back through my portal, I can actually face the direction of that angle and step through. And when I step through, I keep that angle in the nether, and this is the direction I need to go to give me the best odds at finding the stronghold. Again, you're going to travel this direction and place a portal that is roughly 200, 220 blocks away from the origin, because you did find the closest stronghold with that eye throw. And in this case, you should be an average of about 300 to 400 blocks away, depending on how easy your nether travel is. So in this case, I think I'm pretty close right about here. I haven't tried this yet, so we'll see how close I am. It might link up to the other portal, but we'll find out. And there you go, 200 blocks away. So next we'll talk about which situation you should do blind travel, which you should do educated, and which you should just do no travel. So going back to our Excel spreadsheet, I've come up with a couple different scenarios of what you could encounter in a run and my recommendations on each. In this first scenario, this is an example overworld where we have the green dot is the origin, the 3 blue dots are the randomly generated strongholds, and the red dot is where our lava pool is that we've decided to make a nether portal to get in the nether. In this case, the overworld portal is 250 blocks from spawn. And once we get all of our stuff in the nether and we're ready to leave, I've chosen a moderate amount of time, about 30 seconds to get back to your nether portal to get to the overworld. In this case, the no nether travel method, we would travel 30 seconds to our portal, throw the eye, and then travel to the closest stronghold. I've done a bunch of trials and came up with an average overland speed, an average amount of time it would take to do something like this. These numbers are not taking into account the triangulation or throwing multiple eyes. It's just throwing one eye and running immediately to the stronghold. So on average, this is going to take you about 4 to 5 minutes, a little bit more for triangulation, but it's going to take a while. If we decide to do educated travel, we would still have to travel 30 seconds back to our portal, throw the eye, but then in the nether, we would travel to this location, place down a portal, and then we would only have to travel a little bit more to get to the stronghold. Travel in the nether is 8 times faster, so this is going to take us only 2 to 3 minutes on average, depending on how your nether terrain is, how easy it is to get around, but pretty significant time save. In the blind travel, we don't have to travel 30 seconds to get back to our original portal when we're in the nether. We just have to get to the closest area that looks appropriate. It would be best to travel in the nether in a straight line, but you could really, whatever the terrain is, you can just pick a random position from 200 to 220 blocks out in the nether and put a portal down. From there, we have to throw the eye and still travel to the stronghold, but on average, this is still going to save us some time. So when we look at all 3 of these options compared to each other, obviously not nether traveling is going to be the worst, and educated and blind travel end up being pretty similar in this scenario. Educated travel does beat out blind travel in this case, but if we choose a little bit higher value, let's say 40 seconds from your portal in the nether, all of a sudden now it takes us an additional 10 seconds to get back to our portal. So this number would go up to 223. But blind travel would actually decrease by 10 seconds because now we're actually further out and we're closer to that 200 blocks from the nether origin. So this number will go down to 220, and all of a sudden blind travel is now better. So in this scenario where we have a 250 block portal, it's not actually clear which option is best. Sometimes the nether terrain is very difficult, and so you want to go with blind travel because what if the eye points in a really bad direction? You just can't travel there in the nether. Sometimes nether travel is really good, and you're scared that your blind travel is going to take you 2,000 blocks away from Stronghold, so you want to go with educated travel. In this case, I would probably recommend blind because it's easier, you don't have to do as much math, but this is really personal preference. In this next scenario, our portal is now 1,000 blocks from spawn. So let's say you maybe hit a village with a blacksmith or have some really good stuff. You want to continue the run even though you're fairly far. These are the new times that we get. Obviously, the no nether travel option is still going to be the worst, but now it's only maybe 2 to 4 minutes to get to a stronghold. In educated travel, our time save is pretty significant this time. And the reason behind that is when we come out into the nether and throw our eye and it goes this direction, if we were throwing from the origin, we know that the eye is going to point towards the closest of the 3 strongholds. So it's going to be closer to this inner ring on average. So if we're throwing from close to the origin, we want to go about 200, 220 blocks. If we're throwing from this far out, what you actually want to do is go about 250 blocks from the origin, because now the eye isn't pointing towards the nearest inner stronghold. It's pointing towards the one that happens to be closest to you in this area. And so it's on average going to be further away. So when we're doing this, we want to pick a position about 250 blocks from the nether origin and place a portal there because this stronghold is going to be on average within this ring. It's not going to be a little bit closer. And so the time save you get from doing this, playing this smart, is actually pretty significant. It's only about 1 to 2 minutes. If we go to the blind travel, the results are going to be about the same as before because we're still picking a random direction. We're still going to be about 1,000 blocks away. And so if we compare all three of them, we can actually see that educated travel wins out in this one by a significant margin. So the further out your overworld portal is from spawn in general, educated travel is going to edge out as the best method. Now, this is a little weird of a scenario, which doesn't happen very often, but let's say you have a really, really good run in the overworld. Maybe you do ocean travel and you find a lot of gold and a lot of good stuff, and you just want to continue the run, and you're 1,700 blocks away from the origin. You're already in the first ring, and so things become a little less clear. Your no nether travel option actually isn't that bad anymore, because once you step out into the overworld, you're already in the perfect position. So this option is actually pretty good this time. Educated travel, the time does decrease, but it's not as good as before. Also, this eye throw can give you a lot of math headaches, because what if the eye points this direction or this direction? Based on where you are in the ring, the stronghold can be in a lot of different locations. It can be really difficult to deal with. So it is going to give you a time save doing educated travel, going about, again, 250 blocks for the nether origin. But based on your throw, it can be really, really challenging. Blind travel in this case doesn't really make any sense because your portal was already at the perfect position. So you could just throw a portal down wherever you are and just go. But on average, it's actually not going to save you any time. On average, the blind travel is actually going to be a little bit longer because of the amount of time you have to build the portal. But you could still throw a portal down and do it. It just doesn't give you any time save. And so educated travel again wins out when you're farther from spawn. But in this case, the way the eye points can be really difficult. So here's a quick summary on my recommendations on which method to choose given the scenario. If you have a close overworld portal to spawn, in the nether you are far from your portal. It takes you more than 40 seconds, which is about 100 blocks away in the nether, to get back to your portal. And if there's bad nether terrain, I would suggest blind nether travel. The reason nether terrain matters so much is that educated travel, it forces you to go in one direction. If you run into basalt deltas or lava lakes or netherrack wall, it can be really difficult. So if it's bad terrain, just do blind travel. As long as you're going roughly away from the origin, you can choose any path you want. If, on the other hand, your overworld portal is a little bit further from spawn, you are close to getting back to your portal in the nether, and there's good nether terrain in any direction, educated travel should be the biggest time save. If you have a very late overworld portal and you're close to your portal, you could just ignore the obsidian in your inventory and go for no nether travel. If you're further than 20 seconds away, you could just make the nether portal there and exit right away, but it shouldn't get you any closer to a stronghold on average. So that's my summary. It wouldn't be a great video unless I showed you a couple tips and tricks, so we'll go into that last. So my first trick has to do with portal placement in the nether. The table in the upper right is a kind of quick reference that I've made that I always have on my second monitor when I'm running, just in case I get nether travel and I need to go to approximate coordinates in the nether. So that's a list of X and Z coordinates for the first and second ring that give you approximately the best locations to go, and the values are kind of easy to remember. So there's a couple options when you're looking for a blind or educated portal to build. The first option is you just go pause, you look at your X and Z coordinates, and figure out where the best portal placement is with the calculator. Run a bunch of numbers, make sure you get the exact placement, and then go from there. When you're in the pause menu, your real timer increases, but your in-game timer doesn't. And so that's the in-game timer is the one that's on the leaderboard. So you can technically pause as much as you want, and it won't affect your official time. If you're like me, you don't really like pausing very much. I just like using quick reference guides and going pretty fast. And so I would just look at my X and Z coordinates as I'm going through the nether. So if I'm forced to go this route, for example, in the nether, I'm just watching my X and Z coordinates, not really watching what's in front of me, and watching these numbers go up. So if I'm at 140 here and 73 here, I'm looking at the highest number, and I know Pythagorean theorem, this number isn't going to add much to the total, so I'm probably at 155, maybe 160 from the nether origin, so I know I still need to go a bit further. So if I go to right about here, I would see on my quick reference sheet, this is 10 coordinates higher here, but this is a little bit lower than 100 here. So I'm close to 175, 100. This is approximately good enough. This is a perfect place to put my portal. It's key that when you're in the nether looking for a portal placement, you don't get too precise with the coordinates. Don't spend too much time worrying about the exact coordinates. As long as you're roughly 200, 220 blocks away, you'll get the same average. So don't spend too much time. Just place the portal and go. I would do a quick look around for the highest position I could place this portal. I would probably choose this area. 30% of the time when you're exiting the nether, from what I found in my trials, you will end up underground in a cave. 70% of the time you'll end up on the ground or above the ocean. So you do want to build your portal in a higher Z value or a higher Y value in the nether to give yourself best odds at a higher Y value in the overworld. So this last trick I have is a 2-eye triangulation method that I use when I get out of the nether. A lot of times when you're doing nether travel, especially blind travel, you'll get out of the nether and have no idea how far the stronghold is. It could be 2,000 blocks away, it could be right underneath you. So I prefer to throw 2 eyes at the very beginning and finding the angle difference between them in order to give me a rough approximation of how far away the stronghold is. So the way this method works is you're going to want to throw an eye. In this case, I already know the stronghold is in this direction. It's going to go towards this obsidian. You throw an eye, you collect it, you run 50 blocks, 90 degrees that way or 90 degrees that way, and then you throw another eye. And you find the angle difference between them. The table on the upper right shows the angle difference that you get and the resulting distance to the stronghold. In this case, I'm basically at spawn, so I should be pretty far. So I would throw an eye, I get negative 101.7. I'll travel 50 blocks that way. In this case, I'll just do 50 blocks. I made another obsidian exactly 50 blocks that way. So I keep in mind it was negative 101.7 approximately. And once I get about 50 blocks away, I'll throw another one and find the difference in the angles. So it's roughly 1.5 degrees, somewhere around there, maybe 1 degree. So the table in the upper right is very rough approximations. If you're further than 1,000 blocks away from the stronghold, the angle is not going to be very precise at all, especially if you're just eyeballing it like I have. So in this case, 1 to 2 degrees, yeah, we're about 2,000 blocks away from the stronghold. You can do something. You can use F3 plus C to copy your coordinates and angles on the keyboard and pause the game, calculate, and figure out exactly where the stronghold is. The Google Doc has a better 2-eye approximation, and you can really get down to very precise numbers if you do it that way. I'm just going to do another throw. I'm not really sure how close this is going to be. I'm just going to do an approximate one and hope that I'm pretty close here. Let's see, right about, I don't know, here's about good. We'll try another one. So throw the eye, find the angle. It's about negative 100.5. Go roughly 50 blocks away, which is kind of hard floating over ocean, but right here is probably good. So it was 100.5. Now it's 102. So we're still a few degrees. So I would expect to be maybe 1,500 blocks away from strongholds. Yeah, we're still pretty far. So once you get closer, once you get about 1,000 or less, the numbers start getting pretty accurate. This method actually gets pretty good, but you do have to give it a couple tries. Go into a practice world, try this out 10, 15 times from different distances, and it does take a while to get used to be honest. So don't expect to just be in a run and do this method immediately and get good results, because going 50 blocks sideways is kind of tough until you've done it a few times. Exactly. So if we do this here, negative 94.4, go collect my eye. And then I found that roughly 12 jumps on flat land will get you 50 blocks away. So I got to remember 94.4 and 12 jumps. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Stop. So 94.4 to 90. I'm about 4.4 degrees away. So we should be roughly 600 distance to Stronghold. I hope this works. Nice, 640 blocks away. So I would recommend doing something like that as soon as you get out of the Nether if you have extra eyes. If you don't, just throw one eye and follow the angle and continuously throw. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and good luck Nether traveling.